All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into all the things that you need to know to give you a good, correct process for the Week 10 slate. Let's go ahead and get into it. And again, like last week, this is going to be very much concentrated, hopefully faster paced, more direct, because, well, I'm doing this video on Sunday morning. Apologies for that. My 3-month-old was in a little bit of a tizzy last night, so I wasn't able to do it when I typically would. But albeit, that's going to lead to more direct information, easier to break down the slate. Let's go ahead and start out with the quarterback position. So to me, guys, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be looking at someone below 6K, especially on the slate. And to me, the top play really at quarterback, given the price tag, is going to be Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has been extremely consistent. We have seen that for sure. And if we look at this sample size, when Deebo Samuel was on the field, which he's going to be back this week, I think that this is what we can expect from him, especially this week going against the Jaguars, who not exactly an elite defense. And really, if you look at the 1 week in which he struggled against Cleveland, best defense in the league by far, right? And if we take that out, he's been really good. And Cincy, a very good defense he did well against as well. So yeah, Brock Purdy with Deebo Samuel back is highly appealing. Some people might be trying to go Will Levis. I'd probably say let's stay away from that. I will say Kenny Pickett does hold some GPP upside this week. Jair Alexander is doubtful for the Green Bay Packers, and obviously one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He's going to be out. They did trade Rasul Douglas as well, so they're going to be pretty thin in the secondary. So him and Deontay Johnson could make for a decent stack in GPPs. You know, there is some upside there, and also if you wanted to roll with George Pickens in there, you could as well. But yes, Brock Purdy, the easy play at quarterback. Let's go ahead and move on to running back. So at running back, I think it's pretty clear if you can pay up for Christian McCaffrey, you do want to do that. I'm not too worried about pairing Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey together. We have seen those two, be pretty consistent in the passing game, and actually that's probably a unique way to get some shares of them, even though it's not too crazy. Tony Pollard is someone that some people are going to be on the slate. I'm not saying that's wrong. It is a high scoring game. He should get a lot of work, but at the same time, Rico Dwaddle could be a decent GBP play. That game is a double-digit spread for the point spread, like 13 points or something like that. So I wouldn't say he's a lock, and though to me, I want to dip down into, probably Aaron Jones. He had almost 60% of the work last week, did have 20 carries, 26 total opportunities. And yes, that could be a thing in which they try to dial that back this week, simply because we have seen when he gets a lot of work, he is more prone to get injured. At the same time, he looked really good, and the offense was really blooming with him on the field. And the best thing about the Packers last week is that the last 2 series that they had, they scored 10 points on. And why did they do that? Because they didn't make any mistakes. 0. And literally, guys have been averaging like 2 per series on both sides of the football. And guess what happens when you don't make mistakes? When your offensive coordinator can plan a normal series, it's going to be successful. So hopefully they finally cleared those high school mistakes up. We'll see. But all in all, I do think Aaron Jones at 6.5 is definitely an intriguing play this week. From there, a lot of people are going to be on Bijan Robinson and also Joe Mixon. I'm not going to say that those are wrong. Joe Mixon is at a cheap price tag and kind of a safe price tag as well. I do feel like he's a click that we can get to. If you guys feel like Aaron Jones is a little bit too risky, then you can easily get to Joe Mixon. I'm fine with that. A little bit of a price savings. The matchup's about the same. And then a lot of people are trying to get to Bijan Robinson. The squeaky wheel gets the grease here. A lot of people are expecting that. Really good spot for him. And it's not like he hasn't been getting work. 15 opportunities. I think everyone was kind of expecting him to get 15 or so opportunities. At the same time, no more need for Cordell Patterson or Jonnu Smith to begin weird workloads. Let's just get the ball to Bijan Robinson. So I'm perfectly fine with him as a play. One of the sneaky plays I like is going to be Alexander Madison. Okay, with Cam Akers gone, I expect him to get to double-digit points because he should get around 4 targets, should get around 20 opportunities, and that is a very cheap price tag for someone that is going to get 20 or so opportunities. It's tough to find that elsewhere. You also have Rachaad White right there as well. I get that. And honestly, guys, these two do feel safe. White has looked better and better each game, and I've compared those two players together this whole season. So I'm perfectly fine with those two as running back plays. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the receivers. So receiver is definitely more difficult this slate. You got Keenan Allen going against Detroit. I'd be fine getting to him. A lot of people are going to get to ASB just given the matchup. He's been an extremely consistent fantasy producer. I'm fine with that. The player that I like the most, though, is going to be CeeDee Lamb. He's the receiver I want to pay up for. We have just been seeing him be dominant, okay? And I know against the Giants in week 1 didn't exactly have a great game. This offense was kind of just weird at the start of the season, but he has been an extremely consistent fantasy producer. They have figured out ways to kind of unlock CeeDee Lamb by moving him around in the formation. And yeah, clearly he's getting the football. This game does have blowout risk, but at the same time, so that game against the Rams, I'm not too worried about it. I feel like he's a great play. And then from there, I do want to get to like Brandon Ayuk. I think just he has been an extremely safe and consistent fantasy producer. I know Deebo Samuel's back, and I think Deebo Samuel is a fine GPP play, but I do think that we are going to see something like Brandon Ayuk really kind of unleash, I guess, after the bye week. And so I don't mind him as a play. But again, yeah, Deebo Samuel at a cheaper price, they definitely a little bit more intriguing there. Terry McLaurin, to me, just a clear-cut play at his price tag, someone that's easy to get to. We have seen Sam Howell definitely try to get to football to him a little bit more. And yeah, just against Seattle, I would hope that he'd be able to get it going. So yeah, I'm going to be ending up on him a lot. Deontay Johnson, again, with Jair Alexander off the field, like he should be able to feast. They're already moving him around the rotation or the offensive formation. I think he's going to be a super safe play for us. I do want to mention some other receivers that we have. I still think that Christian Watson, a great GPP play. Guys, he's had a target in the end zone every game thus far. He dropped one last week, should have had it. He dropped one against Minnesota, should have had one there. And then against Denver, eventually he's going to have a touchdown here. Eventually he's going to have a big game. It's right there. Just needs to come down with it. And he made a spectacular catch. His only catch was a spectacular catch. I'm like, if you just showed those ball skills on any one of those other end zone targets that you got over the last 3 weeks, he's had about like 7. Well, like you probably would have a lot more points here, buddy. Like at least 10. Crazy. Tyler Boyd is a decent play this week. Obviously with T. Higgins out, we expect him to be a safe play, but at the same time, a lot of people are going to go to Trenton Irwin, and I'm not saying that's wrong. We saw Trenton Irwin get a lot of snaps and a lot of targets the last game that T. Higgins was out. 10 targets in that game. Now, yes, Arizona is the easier team to pass against than is Houston, but at the same time, Houston and the Bengals matchup is supposed to be a very high scoring game. So if that's going to happen, I think it's going to come because someone like Trenton Irwin is also playing well. Continuing on, I do like JSN as price tag. He has been someone that's been much more consistent thus far this season, so I'm fine getting to him. I think he's a good play this week. And then we kind of let's go ahead and move on into tight end. Tight end is a difficult spot because we are going to have some salary left over, whether you go with the Cincinnati value or you kind of go more of a fair and balanced approach. You are going to have some salary left over because that defense, I think I'm just going to go with the Cardinals defense going against Atlanta. Guys, Taylor Heineke has looked bad. Okay. And to me, this is the lowest price defense that I see not going negative. Okay. I'm worried about the Jaguars against San Francisco. They have been pretty good, don't get me wrong, but I worry about that. Giants against Dallas, yeah, they're expected to get blown out. And albeit you could just pay up for Dallas as well. Like you could easily do that, I think, on this slate. Yeah. And then go with Irv Smith, who I think Irv Smith going to be the leading tight end for the Bengals. And we could see him get a little bit more work. Like I am fine with this build. Again, I hate telling you guys to pay up for the top scoring or for the top price defense. It worked out last week with the Cleveland Browns. I think it could work out this week. But if we're not doing that, we're going down to the Cardinals because, again, Taylor Heineke has looked terrible thus far this season. And then you can pay up for tight end if you want to go Jake Ferguson. I'm fine with that. Evan Ingram, I'm fine with that. The issue with those two is that they have a more difficult matchup. I do want to call Jawan Johnson a sneaky good play. Played in 75% of the snaps last week. Had a 20% target share as well. And so if we're not playing like Michael Thomas at his cheap price tag, I think that's going to come because someone like Jawan Johnson has a good game. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And so I hope a lot of you guys know this, but we've been on a 5 straight slate series of cashing now. I think that just comes down to not forcing in dumb mistakes. Like there's been a lot of strange ownerships, especially on the main slates. And then like 4 showdowns, I just don't really care about ownership. I'm focused on making the best build possible. But let's just take a peek at the ownership by position this week. And so we look at it, Joe Burrow is getting a lot of ownership. Dak Prescott getting a lot of ownership. And so to me, guys, the top play that I see is going to be Brock Purdy. But we can see it's all spread out, and it makes sense. It probably should be spread out because while there isn't a direct awesome play, like Geno Smith's in a good spot, Geno Smith looks terrible. You got Jared Goff, probably a little bit too expensive, but he should be able to go off as well. So definitely a lot of interesting plays here. But to me, like we're not getting an edge there with the ownership. I would say probably Trevor Lawrence a little bit too overowned at his price tag. Don't really want to get there. I do worry about Lamar Jackson, his matchup against Cleveland. Don't want to get there as well. So, those would be the fades I would go with, but it's not really like we're fading anyone there. So let's take a peek at running back position here. At running back, yeah, Christian McCaffrey pulling in a bunch of ownership. I do worry about Austin Eckler because, well, man, he just like the running game hasn't been there. Like how many times are you going to just be able to dominate via the passing game? It's just eventually that kind of free square is going to break and it's not going to be there. So I do worry about him a little bit. And then just going down the list, like I do think Joe Mixon will probably actually end up being one of the highest owned players on the slate. All in all, though, it is currently spread out. White is the safe price tag, but who's the one player that we might be getting a decent edge on? Alexander Madison, and Aaron Jones is pretty high owned as well. Let's see any other players that we could potentially get a good edge on, like Kenneth Walker. I know he's been losing snaps to Zach Charbonnet, but this game is projected to stay close. And if it does, you expect him to be the lead back. And all in all, I hope that they're watching the film and realizing that is stupid. Get Kenneth Walker the ball, even in the passing game. He's better. See it on film every single week. Another kind of GPP play I just want to mention, Tyjae Spears. They're going against the Bucs. The Bucs are very much a funnel defense. And what I mean by that is you can't rush the football against them. And so I know he's a running back. Why would you play a running back that can't rush the football against the defense? Derrick Henry probably won't be able to rush the football against them. So to me, that's where Tyjae Spears could get used a little bit more in the screen game and maybe split out a little bit more and get a couple more receptions. He has looked too good to not have an awesome game just yet. And so I think that that's going to come sooner rather than later, and it could even happen this week. Devin Singletary was bad chalk last week. I think I made that very clear. This week, he could be decent, though, because it's a very high-scoring game. We see that. And now no one wants to be on him because he was bad chalk. Like, again, terrible matchup last week. That was easy to see. Now this week, the exact same play in a better match, a little bit better of a matchup. Like, that's definitely intriguing to me. And then, yeah, I guess it wouldn't be too shocking to see Rico Dwaddle have a good game if the game's a blowout. Let's go ahead and move on into receiver. So at the receiver position, yeah, Keenan Allen pulling in a lot of chalk. Jamar Chase also pulling in a lot of chalk. That makes sense. I mentioned that I wanted to get to CeeDee Lamb. I think he's more safe, but, you know, honestly, these top four, all very much safe. And then we are seeing the ownership get spread out a little bit more. Deontay Johnson is pulling in more ownership because he's too cheap. Chris Godwin, you would expect him to have a better game than he did last week. Terry McLaurin, I love him as a play. I think I'm going to be probably at 20% on him. That seems to be a little bit too low. Drake London, I'm fine with as well. Want to point him out at 10% ownership. That's okay. Tank Dell, probably a little bit too high. I'm a little bit shocked that we're not seeing like Baltimore players be a little bit higher owned. Tyler Boyd, Trenton Irwin, as I mentioned, 7% for him, 9% for Boyd. I know the matchup isn't the best, but at the same time, you would assume that they'd be able to get it going. Christian Watson, I would say this, given his upside, that should probably be at least 12. Like I said, like the plays have been there. He just needs to make them. And I know you guys are hearing that saying, well, if he's not making the plays, why would I want to be on him? I get that. Kyle Phillips, a decent flyer GPP min price play if you need to get there because, well, I would hope that he would get more snaps in this game. He looked good, right? No, he's only getting 30% of the snaps. That's the worry with him, but still not a terrible play. I do want to call out the Minnesota value as well. Brandon Powell and then also Tristan Jackson. There are decent plays. Like Jordan Addison, going to be a fine play. Don't get me wrong, TJ Hawkinson, fine play. But one of those two, and we saw Josh Dobbs has a decent amount of ownership, one of those two receivers for them are going to have a decent game if Josh Dobbs does have a good game. And they're basically going unknown. So we have a decent amount of value there. And then lastly, looking at the tight ends, I'm actually curious. I haven't taken a look at this. Ownership-wise, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, TJ Hawkinson. So people are finding ways to pay up. And I think this is why we've had such an awesome season thus far, is because typically we're not paying up for tight end, and we can typically find the cheap tight end play that's going to give us points. And I think that's Irv Smith today. I do worry about his snaps, as you should as well. Tanner Hudson, also fine. Like if he's going to be getting about 30% of the snaps, he has a high target share when he's on the field. I don't mind those two. And just given how banged up they are, I kind of want to roll with that. We're actually seeing Drew Sample get more ownership or get about the same ownership as those two. And I'm kind of okay with that. But yeah, Jawan Johnson, fine with him as ownership as well. Let's go ahead and run a build here, and then I'll be getting out of here, guys, because straightforward, easy. I don't want to say it's not as easy as last week. Last week was a very straightforward, easy slate. A little bit more difficult this week, and probably coming in off of 5 straight slates of cashing. Might have some regression here, right? Like you can't run that hot. And so here we go. What the data sees as the top lineup is going to be Dak Prescott, Joe Mixon, Rashad White, Deontay Johnson, ASB, Marquise Brown. That's an interesting name. I don't mind that. I don't want to go double tight end, but we are seeing, maybe there's something there because probably both a little bit too cheap. I guess I'd be okay with that. Trey McBride should get more work, but if we're doing that, we should probably get to Kyler Murray. The next best one, Dak again, Joe Mixon, White. So it does seem to be favoring those two. And then Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown. I actually don't mind this lineup. This one is kind of sneaky good here. I could definitely see getting into this, and I might enter that to see how it does compare to my cash build that I have out there. But that's going to be all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage. Again, apologies for the late upload for this, but again, more direct content for you guys. So hopefully that helps you guys cash this week. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.